Hey there, wolves and pups. This is Kai's Whitefang coming at you from Big Werewolf Rescue, and today we've got a new no CP PvP werewolf build for you, and we call it the Energizer Werewolf. So let's go ahead and take a look at the gear. Alright, so we are wearing the Engine Guardian, Satchel's Defenders, and Essence Thief. All of these sets in one way or another have a way for you to restore resources, and that is the biggest part of this build. Is you're going to be a werewolf that is just going to keep going. You will have an influx of stamina coming through Essence Thief every 10 seconds, as well as a nice little heal. You'll also get from the Essential Defender's Cuirass and set here, it's a heavy armor set. You're going to restore 643 stamina magicka for every stack of Essentials duty that you have on you, and that's going to consume the stack. You can build that up every second, so essentially you can get over 6,000 resources back every 10 seconds as long as you're doing direct damage with non-heavy attacks. So that is pretty cool for you to utilize in a PvP setting if you're just continually putting pressure on your enemies. As a werewolf, you're going to want to be doing some heavy attacks anyway, so you're going to be restoring a good chunk of stamina. And if you need that stamina magicka before you get to those 10 stacks, there's no diminishing returns or anything. There's no consequences for taking a little bit of stamina and magicka. Or even if you're just weaving heavy attacks, you're going to be building up some of those stacks of the Essentials duty. So you can continually be getting back those resources while you're in combat. Both of those rely directly on being in melee. You're not going to be able to proc any of these when you're further away from your target, so that's kind of why we're using the Engine Guardian as well. That's going to allow you to, as you're healing yourself, as you're repositioning, when you're not doing damage to somebody, you're at range from a target before you push in. If you're casting a heal to get yourself top back off, you got that 10% chance to activate that automaton and have yourself restored some health, stamina, or magicka. Any of them is good for a werewolf. It's really nice when you have that magicka coming into you, that magicka flood, because that's basically going to give you pretty close to unlimited werewolf healing. You're going to be casting as much as you can, and your bar is just going to keep filling up. So that's nice to have, especially when you're under direct fire. That lingering health there that you can get off of this is very nice too. Essentially, that's 1200 health every second in a no CP environment. So also very nice to have on you, just in combat as some passive healing. And back down here to the Essence Thief, we'll talk about that in a second. You get that extra health and stamina when you do a lighter heavy attack. It pulls enemy's essence on the ground, and you've got about 5 seconds to get to that, and then you'll be getting extra damage done by 10%. So not only is this a nice sustain stat, but it is also one of the most powerful damage sets in the game. So it's a kind of a double-edged sword in your favor, because you're going to be able to get a good chunk of resources back and also high damage. The build itself is not necessarily a high damage build. As you see, we're not using any damage sets except Essence Thief. We're going to put Triune. I have one protective on here just to get a little bit more tankiness, but you can go ahead and run all Triune. I'd recommend that. That's going to increase your maximum health, your stamina, and your magicka. Basically, the bigger battery you are, the more resources you hold, the nicer it is when you have to dump a bunch of resources, whether you're getting pressured or you're putting extra pressure on an enemy. Having that larger tank and all of these sets working in your favor to continually top off is going to make you have a nice pool to dip into at any time. Some of the traits, we're rolling on some of the stuff. The gear itself, we're doing all impenetrable. I'm currently running heavy, 6 heavy, 1 medium. and prismatic on everything, just like the triune there that I was talking about. It's the biggest bang for your buck on the gear triune and protective. For my weapon, I'm just using those poison to apply extra pressure to the opponent. You could do a Magicka Steel or Stamina Steel or something like that to play more into the theme of the build. Also, if you get comfortable with just these sets here, you can also swap out Engine Guardian for another set. You can throw on Kina because our sustain is so good. You can use that as a tool to either turn off that extra sustain you have by increasing the cost of your abilities to gain some more damage, or flipping on the other side, leave it unactivated and still have good sustain through the other two sets. I have a back bar of Sword of Essence Thief and Shield of Essence Thief. Both of those kind of just for human form, help with survivability. But you can play around with whatever you want with that. As for race or for class, let's go ahead and look at that. I am currently using the Orc. Another race that you could use with this build that has a little bit less damage is Imperial. Imperial, when you do direct damage, you also gain some resources back and you have a little bit better sustain because you have cheaper abilities. But as of right now, I'm using it on a Orc just because we want a little bit more damage. The sustain we're getting out of the other sets is just fine. You could feel free to play around with your monster set, dropping Engine Guardian, going Imperial, so you can get some more damage somewhere else and gain some more sustain a different way. But the Orc passives are really nice. You get the extra stamina, the extra health. When you do a weapon ability, including a werewolf attack or light attack, you're going to get that extra health as well. That's kind of nice. If you're using a set like Troll King, that can actually proc your Troll King through passively light attacking every 4 seconds, instead of having to use your costly werewolf heal, which may not even proc your Troll King if you end up over that threshold for minimum health left after the heal. Race, we're using the Sorcerer, just because the Sorcerer has the highest amount of damage that you can obtain in werewolf form, and the best sustain. So kind of best of both worlds. You have the ability to get into your form quicker. You got 15% decrease cost in your ultimate, so that can help you out there. You have Amplitude, which is going to increase damage done to your opponents. That's pretty nice. You don't get any of the Expert Mage because none of your werewolf or your sorcerer abilities end up being on your bar, but you do get the Energize, which is extra physical damage, which the majority of the werewolf damage is physical, everything except for that poison or disease damage that you have on that Claws of Anguish. As far as everything else, physical damage, and bleeds and heavies and light attacks are all physical damage, so that's really nice to have. You also have a couple of other good things going on here. You have the Power Stone, like I had mentioned, cheaper ultimate, and then you have, there we go, Unholy Knowledge, reduce the cost of your abilities, and of course, one that isn't really talked a lot about, but after you block an attack, your next ability is reducing cost by 15%. So when that Engine Guardian's up, if you're blocking, your heal, which is expensive in itself, is going to cost 15% less. So you can kind of weave that into your rotation now that you have higher amounts of sustain on this build. You can use that to increase further the bang for your buck on your heal or any of your weapon abilities that are also pretty high in cost. Of course, you're going to want to make sure that you're fully utilizing Undaunted, because that's going to help out, especially if you are using a 5-1-1 combination. It's going to just increase those health pools. That's going to help out that battery charge, kind of like we talked before. So in werewolf form, in a CP environment, this is what the resources kind of look like. Almost 20k match magicka, stamina a little over 42, and health a little over 25. You're going to notice that the weapon damage isn't crazy high. I currently have a major brutality and savagery going. You can use this pot almost 100% of the time in PvP just because you are getting so many resources back other ways that you don't really need to use a tripod to restore your magicka. That weapon damage is going to look a little low, but that's not factoring in that your damage set is a set that increases your damage by 10%. Your sorcerer passage that is increasing your damage by 5%, and also, depending on your target's health, is increasing your damage by 10%, scaling down depending on what their health is. But still, that's a lot of damage multipliers onto this right here. I'm using the lover, and I'm also using a sharpened two-hander. So your penetration is going to be really high. And one thing that I didn't mention before as far as werewolf abilities is you have Ferocious Roar, which can give you back that extra stamina when you attack an off-balance target. You can go the other morph on this. I would actually recommend that. The more I've played this build, the more I realize that that extra stamina boost from heavy attacking off target really doesn't help you as much because you're really not hungry for stamina like that. So you can use that extra penetration off of that to essentially give you 10k penetration in a no CP environment, which is very strong. And you'll see a couple clips here of some gameplay of where I am either kill leader or I am putting out millions of damage in a single game. So you don't have to worry about damage because you want to rely on that ability to spam Claws of Anguish to apply that extra pressure by taking away their heals from them. And using your Hollow of Agony on a target that is feared is very strong. So after you bleed them dry of their resources and bleed them dry of everything else, they start panicking. They roll dodge more. They get CC locked and they can't get out because they burned all their stamina trying to keep their head above water. That's when you lay into them with some Hollows of Agony. If you are unfamiliar with these sets, most people have seen Engine Guardian go off. They've either fought against someone that has had it, or maybe they've used it themselves at one point or time on a build. The other sets, Essence Thief has had a couple changes to make it easier to find. It's been one of those sets that a lot of people have theory crafted around, but in practice they haven't had much success with because either they are kiting or they can't see it in a fight. Zos has kind of changed a couple things around there that makes it easier for that to see. It doesn't travel as far away from you. So it makes it easier to use in combat, especially in a BG environment where you're not really doing a lot of traversing, a lot of traveling. Sometimes you're doing some kiting to stay alive or to reposition yourself, but for the most part, it's a set that you can utilize pretty well in a chaotic environment. So let's go ahead and whack on this dummy here for a second. So first thing you'll notice is that Essence Thief comes up. It rolls off to the side. You'll see that glowing aura on me. That's the Defender set building up stacks. You get about 10 seconds of this Essence Thief. So if we're starting to use abilities, and if that Essence Thief sits there, that huge pillar of light comes out. And we got about 5 seconds to get to it, otherwise there's a 5-second cooldown before it comes out again. Okay, it's been way over 10 seconds, so I actually have plenty of that Sensual's Defender going off right now on me. So we're going to let this build down a little bit, just so I can show you the resources jump. So let's say I'm running low on health, running low on magicka. Engine Guardian's doing his best to keep up, but I need a little bit more. I can heavy attack, and bam, I got an extra heal in my tank. And then right there, Engine Guardian comes up. You see how fast I can get that resource bar back up. One thing, if you're sitting good on stamina and you've got that Essence Thief procced on you, you can feel free to use that stamina to roll into it, because that's basically giving you a free roll dodge. So you're utilizing the fact that you have full stamina at the moment and basically gaining a free roll dodge out of it. It's a really fun build to play. If you guys have any questions about it, feel free to ask down in the comments. I'll do my best to answer it. Any questions you have about this build or any other werewolf builds you're trying to put together. If you have any questions about passives or classes, what passives may come into werewolf form, feel free to ask. There's basically nothing in this game I haven't tested with werewolf, so go ahead and use me as a resource. Until next time, hunt well.